Before I say a single word, I want you to watch something. Just watch it. Don't scroll, don't skip, just listen. Because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Once you see it, you will understand the weight of what is being said.
I would always talk about veganism with kids, and I think inherently they don't want to be eating animals because,
What about chickens?
well, they're sentient individuals too. I'm here to speak up for all non-human animals.
I'm just saying chickens seem like they only have one purpose, and that's to be eaten. Like, what do chickens do?
Well, that's no different to saying that black people only have a purpose to be slaves, right?
Did you hear that? I mean, did you really hear that? Comparing chickens, livestock to black people, to slaves, to our ancestors, to our trauma. This isn't just ignorance, this is something deeper. This is what happens when you dehumanize a people so truly that you feel comfortable using their pain, their history, their chains as a metaphor to push your message and then call it compassion. But here is what hurts even most. The applause, the comments, the thousands who nodded along and called it brilliant. That's not just one person talking. That is glimpsing into the subconscious of a society that still doesn't see us. Today, we are not just reacting to a video, we are unpacking the layers of privilege, appropriation, and casual racism hidden beneath activism. We are drawing the line between allyship and supremacy dressed in ethnical clothing. This is not an attack on virgin mercy. This is a call for respect, for dignity, for history, and most of all, for humanity. Let's talk about it, because we are not metaphors, we are not your comparison, we are not your livestock, we are human, and this is matters.
You heard that, right? She said, comparing chickens to being eaten is just like saying black people were meant to be slaves. You see, let that sink in. She compared black people to chicken. She compared my ancestors who were stolen, beaten, raped, enslaved, and colonized to livestock. She equated centuries of enslavement, plunder, subjugation, genocide, and stolen identity to poultry. Now, do you see how some of them think of us? Some of them don't even mean to be racist anymore because it's just built into how they speak. It's ingrained in their psyche. To her, that was just a normal comparison. And here's the part that really shows how deep this rot goes, right? Now, over 3,900 comments on that video, and over 80% of the people in the comments agreed with her. They clapped for her. They called her brilliant, insightful. But to me, that's not ignorance. That's just how most of them really think. They don't see us as fully humans. Not then, not now. You see what that tells me? It tells me that this wasn't just a personal slip up. This is the collective subconscious of a white society speaking. And let me be clear, right? Animal cruelty is wrong. I do not condone it. Fine. But don't you dare use my history, my people's trauma, as a metaphor to make a point about pigs and chickens. You are not including us in your movement when you say that. You are dehumanizing us because what you just did is not advocacy. It's white supremacy with a vegan label. We are not animals. We are not your metaphors. We are not your examples. We are not your intellectual bait for debates about pork and poultry. Our ancestors weren't born to be slaves. They were kidnapped. They were subjugated, broken and bent under the same boots that now pretend to march for justice. I'm an Edo man. My kingdom was invaded in 1897 by British soldiers who looted my homeland and burned it to the ground. They took our arts, our king, our culture, and stuffed it into their museums. They didn't do this to pigs. They did it to people. They did it to us. People who look just like you. And now you stand there trying to fight for pigs and chickens while casually dragging black people into your argument like our history is just another sound bite. You think that's activism? That's not activism. That's the same old racism with tufo on it. Where was that compassion? Your compassion, where was it when our mothers were raped and our fathers hung from the tree? Where was it when they burned down our city in 1897 and looted my people's legacy? Where was it? You want to fight for chickens? Fine. But don't you ever use my ancestors' suffering to make your point. We are not your talking points. Your colonial arrogance doesn't make you see that your activism is soaked in the same racism your ancestors wielded with whips and chains. You can't see it. This is why we say, and I'm telling you, decolonize your compassion. Because even your empathy still centers on whiteness. Even your justice still requires our dehumanization. Now, have you ever seen any fundraising event in Europe or America? Show me one fundraising event without the pictures of some hungry looking African kids. We are dealing with a culture that still sees black life as disposable, abstract, symbolic, and never sacred. Our ancestors were not chickens. They were builders, scientists, artists, kings, mothers, warriors. They were whole human beings who survived the worst evil the world has ever known. And they deserve more than to be used as talking points in someone's moral crusade. Don't you ever compare
You saw the clip, you heard the words, and you probably felt the same gut punch I did. Let's be clear from the start. Advocating for animal rights is a noble cause. No one here is dismissing the importance of ethnical treatment toward animals. But what happened in that video wasn't animal advocacy. It was a blasted example of how deep systemic racism is ingrained into everyday thoughts, even among those who claim to be progressive. Because the moment you compare the oppression of chickens to the brutal enslavement of black people, you have crossed a line so far beyond disrespect that we have to stop and ask, how did we even get here? Let's unpack that statement. Saying chickens only have one purpose is like saying black people were born to be slaves. That is not just a bad analogy, it is an erasure of generational trauma. It is a rewriting of history where the unique, unimaginable suffering of an entire people is reduced to a historic device and a debate about food choices. This is not an isolated mistake. This is a reflection of a subconscious biases that sees black pen as available, ready to be borrowed, to be used, to be molded into metaphor and analogies, or without concept or consideration. That is not allyship, that is exploitation. Our ancestors wasn't bred to be anything. They were stolen. They were violated, they were broken and beaten, auctioned off like property, not because of some natural order, but because of human error and a calculated system of power and control. That legacy isn't up for comparison. And yet, over 3,900 comments, and in those thousands of comments, the overwhelming majority clap for her. They praise her intelligence, they echo her words. That is what's truly terrifying, not just that she said it, but that so many people agreed. This wasn't just her voice, this was a chorus, a snapshot of what society still thinks of us when the marks come off. That is when we realize racism doesn't always show up in hate groups or slurs. Sometimes it shows up in well-meaning activism. Sometimes it's wear a t-shirt with a slogan about peace. Sometimes it's holding a sign at a protest but still centering white feelings over black lives. And sometimes it compares people to poetry. Let's take a moment to talk about how this comparison isn't just offensive, it's strategically violent. You see, when you normalize the idea that black suffering can be equated to animal treatment, you chip away out our humanity. You make it easier for people to see us as less worthy of empathy, less deserving of justice, less human. You might just think she didn't mean it that way, but intention doesn't override empath. And in activism, language is everything. If your comparison requires the dehumanization of others, then it's not compassion, it's a performance. There's a long, painful history of comparing black people to animals to justify violence and subjugation. It was done in newspaper, in political speeches, in pseudo scientific journals, and it was done to create distance between them and us, to make it easier to whip, chain and kill. So when someone today in 2025 echoes that same logic, however unintentionally, they are invoking the same ideology that allows slavery to exist in the first place. And don't tell us to calm down, don't tell us to see the bigger picture. We are the bigger picture. We live at the intersection of every system this society was built on. So when we say this hurts, you listen. You don't double down, you don't gaslight, you learn. This is not about silencing vagazing, it's about boundaries. You can fight for animals without dragging our history through the dates. You can advocate for change without making a spectacle of our suffering. And if you can't, then activism was never really about justice, it was about ego. Now let's speak to those in the comment, that the ones who said things like she has a point or people are too sensitive. No, we are finally sensitive to the right things. For centuries we were told to toughen up, to forgive, to move on. But this generation, we feel everything. We speak up because silence is what allowed the roots to spread in the first place. So here's the reality. If your activism isn't intersectional, it's incomplete. If it doesn't include a deep respect for the lived experience of black people, then you are not building bridges, you are building soapboxes. And if you think we should just sit back while our history is reduced to a talking point in someone else's argument, then you are not an ally, you are part of the problem. Let's be waking up, not just for one woman in one video, but for everyone who watched that clip and didn't flinch, for everyone who clapped, for everyone who is being complete in turning black suffering into content. We are not prompts, we are not teaching tools, we are not here to make your argument more compelling. We are people with names, with stories, with ancestors who deserves better than to be spoken of in the same breath as chicken. If you truly care about justice, start by listening, by unlearning, by honoring our pain instead of weaponizing it. We are not metaphor, we are not livestock, we are not your moral leverage, we are human. Thank you for watching. If this message hits home for you, don't just like, share, speak, amplify, because silence is comfortable but change is loud. Subscribe for more honest, unfiltered conversations. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other.